This is Ingram Angle from Washington tonight. Thanks for being with us. The real terrorists. That's the focus of tonight's angle. Right, the Democrats had their narrative set long before Biden was sworn into office. Theirs wasn't a story about how Americans would thrive or be safe and happy under Biden's policies. No, because their climate change obsession would deeply damage American families. They always knew that. Therefore, as kind of a preemptive measure, they decided to argue the negative, that electing Republicans in the future would be akin to electing terrorists who would seek to blow up our entire system.
This is just an extraordinarily dangerous course for Republicans to be taking in terms of our democracy.
The Republican Party can no longer say that they don't agree with the insurrectionists, with the bigots, with the racists.
There may now be people aligned with white supremacists who are in Congress. How do you protect the country from them?
It could be that we have a Republican majority in Congress this fall, and if that happens, you may see Republicans in Congress wanting to cut the money to the Department of Justice to turn the lights out. We may lose our democracy.
The Attorney General issued ominous warnings.
The top domestic violent extremist threat comes from racially or ethnically motivated violent extremists, specifically those who advocated for the superiority of the white race.
They announced new task forces.
I have decided to establish a domestic terrorism unit to augment our existing approach. This group of dedicated attorneys will focus on the domestic terrorism threat.
And of course, especially after January 6th, the media never looked back. So Chicago could remain a killing field. More than 100,000 Americans could die from overdoses. China could plot against us in the Asian Pacific. And instead of covering any of that as it needs to be covered, the press focused almost singularly on vilifying the conservative movement with groundless smears about an insurrection that wasn't. And with the wheels coming off the Democratic Party because, because of our crumbling economy, the January 6th mess is still all they've got.
This week's hearing, the January 6th hearing, which surely are the most important hearings since Watergate.
These hearings are going to be quite compelling. I think they understand the importance of leveraging live television to convince the American public how serious this was.
We have this committee investigation coming up, which, again, if you really love America, if you believe in American democracy, if you're a patriot, you want to know what happened on January 6th.
Oh, Joe, tell us about it. Now, first off, on its face, these allegations are ludicrous. The idea that ragtag group of people who smashed their way into the Capitol, that they were the product of some organized effort orchestrated out of the West Wing, it's beyond ridiculous. If there was true evidence of any of that, we would have already heard about it. Now, the moment I saw what was happening on Capitol Hill, I texted Mark Meadows, the chief of staff of the White House. I told him to ask the president to tell everyone to go home. I think I was the first person to do that, maybe one of the first. I knew it was going to hurt the cause, and I said the same thing publicly on Twitter throughout the afternoon and that night on The Angle. Now, it was obvious. A group of angry people had whipped up the crowd into a frenzy, and that's when things became violent. Now, we've always said that in any case, when laws are broken, perpetrators need to be punished, justice must be done without regard to politics. But that wasn't enough for the Democrats. They have attempted, unsuccessfully, to use January 6th to indict the entire Republican Party and protect themselves. In other words, to insulate themselves from any accountability for the devastation they're currently wreaking upon America. Indeed, it is the Democrats and their far-left base that have been the ones terrorizing America these past few years. Now, we're never going to forget the wildings that masqueraded as protests. Can you believe that was America? And then, of course, Antifa attacking citizen journalists. Go, go! Then there was BLM harassing innocent Americans. Abortion fanatics besieging the homes of Supreme Court justices. Showing up at Joel Osteen's Lakewood Church in Texas.
It's my body, my choice. It's my body, my choice. Overturn, no, hell, no.
And if that underwear wasn't enough to terrify you, they're upping the ante by vandalizing the crisis pregnancy centers around the country. It started about a month ago in Madison, Wisconsin.
We're investigating the fruits of hate and violence in the form of an arson, where a specific nonprofit group was targeted for their beliefs regarding the issue of abortion.
And it continues to this day. This past weekend, a pregnancy crisis center in Washington, D.C.'s Capitol Hill neighborhood was vandalized with red paint, eggs, and a message reading, "Jane says revenge." In Amherst, New York yesterday, more acts of terror. Compass Care, a pregnancy services clinic, had its windows broken, it was graffitied and set on fire. Police are investigating it as arson.
Jane's Revenge is this group that's attempting to strike fear into the hearts of pro-life service organizations to keep them from providing care. The intent was for Compass Care to stop services. We won't stop.
And when police officers in Asheville, North Carolina called my next guest, Christy Brown, the executive director of Mountain Area Pregnancy Services, to tell her that the clinic she runs had been vandalized, they warned her that it was bad. When she got to the door of her clinic this morning, she found threatening messages sprayed in red paint on 3 sides of the building, and the sidewalk as well was broken with windows. Painted on the property were the messages, "If abortions aren't safe, neither are you." We'll show that picture in a moment. Now understand, these homes are often run by volunteers, most of them are, who selflessly try to assist unwed, oftentimes scared, expectant mothers. These crisis pregnancy centers offer young women hope and compassion when they need it most. So think of how sick those are who threaten the sanctuary. How is any of this not a hate crime? Where are the congressional hearings? The Capitol Hill press conferences condemning the hate groups behind these threats? We know the answer. If you're pro-life, Democrats really don't think you deserve to be protected from hate. In fact, you deserve hate. Once again, the Democrats have gone so far left, they've left America. None of this is going to break through, I don't think, or make the slightest difference in November. Most regular people, I don't know, I'm getting the sense that they see January 6th as an awful aberration, not as the event that defines America or the Republican Party. But Democrats and their media minions, they're going full steam ahead. They're hoping for a runaway summer blockbuster. The definition of out of touch should include blowing countless millions of taxpayer dollars on partisan hearings when American moms still can't find baby formula. So the real terrorists are those seeking to overthrow every American tradition, from the apolitical nature of the Supreme Court to the sanctity of churches. And they're not doing it through democratic processes, but through intimidation, threats, and yes, even violence. And that's the angle. Joining me now, Christy Brown, Executive Director of Mountain Area Pregnancy Services in Asheville, North Carolina, one of the clinics attacked this week. Christy, I saw the way it looked, the photo of the front of the crisis pregnancy center that you work for. My question to you is pretty awful. Will you be cowed by these criminal actions of the radicals?
Thank you for having us on, Laura. Although we take this as a direct threat to our pregnancy center, we will not back down. We continue today to provide services to a full day of clients. We will be there tomorrow providing clients. We just have to make a few alterations in light of doors being broken and that type of thing. But we will rebuild and improve and continue doing what we do.
And the young women who come for hope and an alternative to abortion. I've had the great privilege of speaking at a lot of crisis pregnancy centers across the country, just amazing angels among us who work at these centers. But are you worried that they're going to be scared, which I think is part of the plan here? They don't want these young women seeking these services. They prefer them to go for the quickie abortion down the road at Planned Parenthood.
Correct. So our first thought this morning was our clients. We had to first assess if we could even see them. When we realized we could, then we got on the phone and we started calling and we said, here's what happened, but we want you to know you're going to be safe. We have police presence, and our clients came in. So it just means we're having to prep them, and we are going to get the paint off as quickly as possible, get the glass cleaned up as quickly as possible, because we want a safe environment for clients, volunteers, and staff.
Now, an anarchist group, and you saw that the A with the circle, sent a tweet with a link to a proclamation for Jane's revenge in the Night of Rage. It read, "We need to get angry. We need to express this madness fully and with ferocity. We need to quit containing ourselves. The next step is carrying that anger out into the world and expressing it physically." Christy, that's about as close as it comes to a violent threat. Again, when the Roe decision ultimately is handed down by the Supreme Court, are you going to be taking extra precautions for your own safety and the safety of your clinic?
Well, we started last year taking extra precautions for safety in our center, so we have already put some steps into place. With today's events, we have been reassessing everything today. We do feel there's a few additional steps that we are taking. We are in constant communication tonight with our local police, who have been wonderful with us today. And so, yes, there will probably be a few additional steps that we need to take.
Well, I'll just say, Christy, thank you for speaking out tonight. There are a lot of folks out there who are truly frightened by what they're seeing. You're actually saving lives, and they're attacking you for doing that. Talk about dark. That is truly demonic. Thank you so much. Joining me now is Stephen Miller, former senior advisor to President Trump, founder of America First Legal. Also with me is Molly Hemingway, the Federalist editor-in-chief and Fox News contributor. Molly, now what's worse, pretending that the left hasn't been engaging in their own political violence or for years, or pretending that January 6th is really something that's defining the Republican Party at this point?
I mean, to some extent, they're the same thing. We know the left has engaged in political violence for decades, and it has not been condemned, unfortunately, by Democrat politicians. You remember in the summer of 2020 that people all the way up to and including Kamala Harris and Joe Biden were encouraging riots where people were attacking the White House, federal courthouses, people's businesses, police precincts. This was coordinated, and this was nationwide, and you didn't hear much pushback. I think conservatives and Republicans have been pretty consistent in condemning political violence, and the aberration, as you point out, of one day of rioting versus this ongoing campaign of threatening people and intimidating them. I mean, there's not really a comparison here.
Now, Stephen, this is serious. I mean, looking at these clinics, these are amazing women, and some men, but it's mostly women. It's mostly a volunteer effort just to help these young women who feel like they have no choice, either get an abortion or their life is over. To do that to them at this moment, I found that particularly chilling, dark. I keep saying the word demonic because that's the thing that, to me, captures it the most.
Well, the DOJ, unfortunately, is a deeply corrupt organization. They should be putting all their resources into protecting these crisis clinics, these pregnancy counseling clinics, to protect these women and to protect those that they're serving. They should also be in our cities, in Chicago, in Detroit, in New York, in Los Angeles, breaking up these criminal street gangs that are dealing drugs, that are using illegal weapons, that are laundering money, and putting them behind bars for decades. But instead, all they want to do is jail Republicans. So you can all sleep safely at night because they got leg irons on Peter Navarro, while you have real criminals running amok, spilling innocent blood all across this country.
Now, Molly, a DHS bulletin is warning of a heightened threat environment in the months ahead. The bulletin listed potential targets to include public gatherings, faith-based institutions, schools, racial and religious minorities, government facilities, personnel, U.S. critical infrastructure, media. I mean, it seems like everything's on the list. It almost seems like they don't want anyone to leave their homes before the midterm elections. I'm sorry, but I mean, the list is pretty much everything.
Or maybe they have a sense that the left will again do another campaign of violence like we saw in 2020 leading up to the election. But I think it's so true that the biggest crisis facing this country is that we do not have a serious Department of Justice or a serious Department of Homeland Security that treats people the same regardless of their political positions. These agencies have been going after their political opponents while protecting their political allies. I mean, you list all these things are happening with pro-life pregnancy centers, pro-life groups, churches, dozens of attacks, including 3 fire bombings that we've heard about. The DOJ a couple years ago sent like a dozen agents to investigate a garage pull at a NASCAR race because they falsely believed it had something to do with a race crime. Why is there no task force being put on these attacks on pro-life groups and Christian churches?
Well, can you imagine if the same thing was done to any type of pro-LGBTQ organization? I mean, and I would support their launching a investigation into them. But I mean, if that happened at any left-wing group, they would be going crazy, Steve.
There'd be thousands of agents. I mean, you wouldn't even know. You wouldn't even know the alphabet soup of agencies that you would see outside that organization. And as you said, we'd support investigating any and all violent crime. But law enforcement has been politicized in this country.
This is disturbing.
They will put innocent Republicans in jail while letting guilty Democrats walk free, and again, letting criminal street gangs rampage freely across this country, and also not investigating Democrats for clear violations of the law that influence our elections. And I would hope, for example, that a competent DOJ would investigate every claim in Molly's book about what Mark Zuckerberg did in the last election.
Now, Molly, speaking of this, the media and the elected Dems are playing into all of this dynamic watch.
I wonder, for folks watching at home now, should they be concerned that these midterms coming up might be marred by violence?
We all should be concerned about the midterms being harmed, and all public officials should be concerned about their own safety. If the fealty to Trump continues and the encouragement to the white supremacists and the terrorists to be involved continues.
Molly, is the translation of not if Republicans win, white supremacists win?
I mean, that's what they've been saying for decades. And this January 6th commission itself has been saying that they would like to overturn the Electoral College. They have not done any real investigation into what happened on January 6th. I think a lot of people would like to know why the Capitol wasn't protected. This has always been a re-election protection idea that Nancy Pelosi had, that maybe if she could gin this up into a much bigger deal than it was, then she could somehow retain the majority for her Democrats. And I don't think it's going to work. I mean, turning this into a production, including hiring a news producer, it's just not what people want to hear as they're suffering so much with the economy, with border problems, with global unrest, with us being ashamed on a global stage.
I mean, Maverick was the summer blockbuster, is the summer blockbuster. Stephen, what do you think this is going to be? Prime time. They're all upset that Fox isn't covering it live. We actually do something called, cater to our audience. Our audience knows what this is. We'll cover it. We'll do plenty of coverage.
This is a scripted political
it's a theater.
convention.
Total theater.
This is TV advertising for the midterms. But here's the thing, it's not going to work, because you know what? People are suffering from inflation, they're suffering from an open border, they're suffering from runaway, rampant crime, and they are not going to be swayed by this ridiculous theater when their lives and the lives of their neighbors are deteriorating under Biden on a daily basis.
Molly, how much does Liz Cheney lose by in Wyoming, do you think?
I used to live in Wyoming, and if I know my...
Did you really? How did I not know this about you?
I don't. I mean, if she had actually spent time in Wyoming, she wouldn't be in the trouble she is now. She has never really represented her constituents.
MSNBC or CNN, where does she go, Molly?
Yes.
Yeah, which one? Which one? I say CNN. What do you think?
I'll just take MSNBC.
CNN's going to say, we hired a Republican. That's what they're going to say. That's their perfect Republican. Molly and Stephen, great to see you both.
Thank you.
And remember, if you can't watch us live, just make sure you set a series record on your DVR. You don't miss every episode, every weeknight at 10 p.m. of the Ingram Angle. But up next, my mini angle on the shameless governance of Illinois' J.B. Pritzker. His day's numbered. Stay there.